Alright, so TriMet updated their Forward Together draft into a revised service concept, and I am now here to make a video talking about it. It's not final, but I gotta be honest, it's way better than the draft. I think what TriMet did is when they were publishing the draft service concept, they made extreme changes on purpose so that it would get people talking about it, and then the comments would start to flood in about what people did and didn't like. So that's what they received, and they have updated it quite a bit, but I still have my comments about it. Let's talk about some line number nonsense. Now again, I know that these are not final at all, and so the numbers could be changed in some situations, but there are certain things that I just don't understand. TriMet seems to want to cancel bus routes and then just renumber them something else and then tack on some extension or change it in some other way. And this is done with these examples. These are pairs of lines. Lines 1, 7, 47, 88, 94, and 97 were all updated on here to the 42, 85, 120, 111, 130, and 131. Now, I'm okay with the line 7 and 85 thing because this one does make a little more sense. The lower line numbers are in North Portland, such as the 4 or the 6. So it does make some sense to have it serving this area with the number 7, and the route has been extended a lot to serve Johnson Creek. So yeah, I do get that one. So I would pretty much try to keep the numbers as close to the original as possible, just for the simple fact that it increases familiarity and decreases the confusion. So this is what I would call all of the lines, as to retain their original numbers so that it's a little bit easier to move forward together with this whole forward together thing. It just makes a little more sense when there's familiarity attached to the line numbers. Also, there are a few additional bus routes that I didn't put on here because they're new bus lines. And again, the extreme bus line numbers don't really need to be happening. Columbia Boulevard could just easily be the 5. Or the other buses through Hillsborough could be in the 40s because, well, today we have the 46, 47, and 48 all running in through Hillsborough, so it'd be nice to kind of have it similar to that, which is where my 41, which is the next open available space before 42, and 49 would very nicely fit in with the Cornelius Pass bus. Now it's time to talk about the pros and the actual good improvements that have come in from the last draft. Now, I don't want to repeat too much information that I've said from my draft video unless I really want to drive a point home. My opinion on many things has changed since my draft video, and I understand the reasoning of why some of the changes happened. So I'm going to do my best to explain that and explain, I think, what TriMet was thinking when it comes to these changes. But also there are some welcome improvements that were not even present in the draft that I'm very happy to see in here. Let's go over all of my pros and what I think has been improved since the draft. You see this number up in the corner? Now, you can kind of skip around a little bit. They should go pretty much in numeric order. If you just want to watch the part that talks about your local bus line or whatever your local collection of bus lines are. So let's start off with the 1 and the 42. Service on Vermont Street will now run to Portland just like it currently does. And it will be increased to all day, finally. It was reduced and now only runs 2 morning trips and 2 evening trips at peak direction only. And this will be much improved, serving Vermont Street all day, at the expense of the 45, which I will talk about later. I think it might be a bit soon to reuse the number 42, as just a few years ago, quite a few years ago, TriMet introduced a new line 42 on Denny and Hall Boulevard, which allowed the buses to come out of Beaverton Transit Center and come straight down Lombard. It provided a new way to get to Washington Square and Tigard. But that line was discontinued just a few years ago and replaced with a rerouted version of the 78. And the 76 and 78 used to run on the exact same route from Beaverton to Tigard every 30 minutes, and so together they ran every 15. But now, of course, we see what we have today, where the 76 runs every 15 minutes, the 78 runs every 30 minutes on a different route, so there is no more 42. But it's only been a few years since that was discontinued, and I'm very surprised that that number is being reused already. The 7. Johnson Creek Boulevard, I think, has needed some bus service for a while. It would definitely be nice to see all-day service on the entire length of Johnson Creek Boulevard, rather than what we see today, which is on, I believe, the line 34 and maybe 75, if memory serves. But that only serves a portion of Johnson Creek. It'd be nice to connect that with downtown Portland and serve all of Johnson Creek, which is what the Line 7 would do. And it would take over today's 85 all the way up from Rose Quarter onto Swan Island, which seems like a much-needed connection as well. That way you could actually go in through downtown Portland to Swan Island. I think this could be a hit. Now time for the 19, 25, and 58. Yes, Canyon Road is mixed in with these buses. It's weird, but it works. And guess what? They actually did my suggestion. I'm not sure if multiple people brought this up, but I'm super excited to announce that all of Gleason Street will now be one bus line. Just the 19. It will run on the entire length of Gleason, rather than how we see it in Before Forward Together, where the 19 travels from Portland over the Burnside Bridge and, you know, does his thing on the Gleason, but then ends at Gateway Transit Center, and then at the the line 25 begins at Gateway Transit Center and goes on to Gleason, only to the Rockwood area, and seemed like kind of a pointless bus route. And I don't understand why it wasn't combined with the 19. They actually sort of did, they sort of took my suggestion and turned it on its head. I said that it would just be the 25 Gleason, but they're going to keep it as the 19 Gleason, which in hindsight is probably a better idea to, again, keep familiarity. If the busiest part of Gleason has been served by the 19 forever, there's no point in changing that number, so the 19 will provide all Gleason service, including much needed and much more service on Gleason beyond just the Rockwood area and all the way to Mount Hood Community College. Seems like a good idea. Oddly, they also mixed it in with today's line 58 on Canyon Road and is going to entirely replace Canyon Road's buses. So my guess is that the buses will enter downtown Portland over the Burnside Bridge and stay on Burnside, so that it will serve stops with the line 20, which is also another good reason why they kept the 19, so that way the 19 and 20 are running together in downtown. And then it'll probably head down 18th Avenue and serve Providence Park all the way down to Goose Hollow, and then head out onto the Sunset Highway just like today's 58 does. It'll just come in from a different side. So unfortunately, we'll lose the split of the 57 and 58, where it was TV Highway and then Canyon Road. We're going to lose those numbers, but that's a trade-off that I'm willing to accept if it means more interconnected service and more streamlined service with downtown Portland. Line 35, which has been upgraded to frequent service. I do like to see that a lot. However, there's something strange here that they want to do that I both like and dislike, and I'll talk about it a little bit later, but there's a branch on the 35 once it gets close-ish to the Selwood Bridge. And I'm going to talk about it in the future sections. I do like that it's going to provide more coverage, but I'm not sure I agree with the line number still being the 35. And once again, I'll cover that in more detail later. In the cons, lines 43 and 56. Alright, so I gotta admit, it's kind of grown on me. Oh, it has? Get it off. Oh, no. That's not what I mean. No, what I mean is that this idea is not as bad as I thought. The 43 and 56 will not enter downtown Portland anymore and will instead detour up Terwilliger Boulevard and end in Markham Hill at OHSU. I still wish there were express options and that it explicitly said there will be weekday rush hour express buses to and from Markham Hill, because, once again, familiarity, and also because it's just not fair to OHSU employees who are used to taking the express buses out of Markham Hill to all of a sudden have the express parts totally stripped away. But even with that downfall, I'm still more than excited that service will be provided all day to and from OHSU from this side, meaning that it will provide an all-day replacement for much of the lines 61, 64, and 65. Now, it's not perfect, as I will discuss in the cons section. Now for the lines 43 again and 62. Now these are going to be rerouted to, instead of ending at Washington Square, will end at Tigard Transit Center. So instead of Washington Square getting the same amount of buses as Tigard Transit Center, approximately, now the transit center that's actually within the downtown area of Tigard and right off of a commuter rail station will be more accurately served, and the Washington Square Transit Center, which is just a shopping mall, a very large and popular shopping mall, but not one that really needs the same amount of buses as a downtown Tigard Transit Center would, especially since, again, the Tigard Transit Center is, well, at the West Station as well. That's a lot of numbers. I am super excited about the expanded service in Hillsborough. The city of Hillsborough has needed this for a very long time, more than 2 decades. And I am super excited to see roads like Century Boulevard, Cornelius Pass, and extensions on other roads such as Baseline finally getting the service we need. Maybe it would be a good idea to allow more services to happen through this area by adding another bus garage. I know I bring it up a lot, but if the West Side had another bus garage, it would help not strain Merlo so much. So instead of the West Side having 1 garage and the East Side having 2, or maybe even 3 once Columbia becomes an official garage, it seems kind of strained right now. The 54 and the 56. Here's a little debate. Which one should get the frequent service, the 54 or the 56? I saw an argument saying that the 56 should be the one that gets the frequent service rather than the 54. Because it provides service to a shopping center, it's gonna be extended anyways to serve more housing, and the MAX already provides frequent service between Beaverton Transit Center and downtown Portland. But I think that argument misses one key point, and that's that the 54 bus, while yes, it goes from Beaverton Transit Center to Portland, it does so in a local service. It provides local service. It's not express like the MAX would be, Metropolitan Area Express. So instead, the 54 bus provides service between those destinations on a busy highway, the Beaverton-Hillsdale Highway. The 54 also provides more service on Beaverton-Hillsdale Highway because, well, it doesn't have to split and go on to Shoals Ferry. It can provide service within the whole length of Beaverton-Hillsdale Highway. And also connects with the West Side's most major transit center, Beaverton. So that's why I think they chose the 54 to go frequent service, and the 56 will run every 30 minutes. I'm fine with that. Ideally, at some point, the 56 would also get updated to 15-minute frequent service, and that way, half of Beaverton-Hillsdale Highway would actually get buses every 7 to 8 minutes. I even have a plan for how the 56 could do that. If the 56 ran every 15 minutes all day, and every other trip ended at Washington Square, then I think that would work. So all buses would go from Markham Hill to Washington Square, and every other trip, aka 30-minute frequency, would go from Washington Square to the Progress Ridge area. But for now, I'm just going to assume that buses will be provided on the 56 every 30 minutes across the whole line all day. And maybe some late night trips will only go as far as Washington Square. I don't know, I'm just guessing. Line 67, this would get extended and beyond the Merlo Road turnaround, serving 170th Avenue in Aloha, Beaverton, and come down Hart Road, and then onto Lombard Avenue into Beaverton Transit Center. So it would actually get extended to Beaverton Transit Center. This definitely seems like a worthwhile extension and provides service on 170th, which has also probably needed buses for a while. Fun fact, long ago, before the MAX even opened to Hillsborough, the 67 did in fact go all the way to Beaverton Transit Center. It took Jenkins Road instead of this new route, but because the MAX was so close by, the 67 was just shortened to Merlo. But it's very cool to see this brought back, and instead the focus was put on coverage here to actually cover more of Beaverton and Aloha. Line 70 has been improved. It's been much more simplified. It will still go through Ladd's Addition just like the previous draft plan, which is good because I do think that they do need some bus service. And the route will, I believe, end at Hollywood Transit Center. Again, it's much simpler than the original plan of having it go on every avenue possible from north to south. If you wanted service to 33rd and Sunderland, the line 17 has you covered there, and the 17 is going to have 20-minute frequency. The 76, once again, I absolutely agree with the added frequent service on 72nd Avenue in the Tigard Triangle. I think this could be a game changer for employees and just for businesses in general when you get more people going through the area. Definitely can't wait for that. Once again, I don't agree with everything because I don't understand why they want it to go to Oregon City Transit Center. I will talk about that in the cons section about how I would serve Oregon City instead. The 97, the extension to Tigard is smart. Right now, the 97 just kind of abruptly ends at the Tualatin West Station. Doesn't even serve the Tualatin Park and Ride. And by the looks of the map, this actually won't serve Tualatin Park and Ride either, which is too bad, but it will go right on by on major roads to Tigard Transit Center. It definitely seems like a worthwhile extension. I still don't understand why this was going to be renumbered to 131. The 97 number seemed just fine, but whatever. Now time for the 190. Turns out St. John's is going to be a very transit-heavy place. It might be worth calling it the St. John's Transit Center or something. There will be a lot of buses serving it. Right now we've got pretty much 7 days a week service provided on lines 4, 16, and 44, for example, but it's going to improve a lot. St. John's is going to be one of the most transit-friendly areas, at least in the North Portland area, and I'm excited to see that. And for the 190 specifically, it seems to travel in a way that makes sense and feeds into Columbia Boulevard, which is a quite dense industrial portion of Northeast Portland. And so I definitely think it would be amazing to have not only all-day bus services on this, but to have it the whole length of Columbia Boulevard. It's now time for the cons. Let's talk about the improvements that are still left to make. Let's start with the 6 and the 14. What is the point of swapping the terminus options? So now the 6 would end at the City Hall and the 14 would go down to Goose Hollow, totally flip-flopping what we see today. That's just moving the problem from one line to the other. I would keep the line 6 still going to Goose Hollow, just like it does. And the line 14 would head up the Transit Mall on 5th and 6th Avenues instead of just ending at City Hall. That way it would provide a different way of travel. So that way it would actually go onto the Transit Mall. It would still connect with the MAX at Pioneer Square, in fact all of the MAX lines, and would provide service throughout this area, serving what I assume would be all the original Line 2 stops. FX2 doesn't run over the Hawthorne Bridge like the old Line 2 did. So if you did have an option that started in the Transit Mall and went over the Hawthorne Bridge, I think that would be a better use of the Line 14, rather than just flip-flopping what the 6 and 14 are already doing, which solves nothing. Now for the 15 and 16. Now, I'm okay with having the 15 extend over the St. John's Bridge and go to St. John's. I think that's great. But once again, TriMet's kind of flipping things around. They flip the 15 and 16's roles once you get to the Yeon and 44th area, which again, I feel doesn't really solve anything. So what I mean here is that the 15 would extend to St. John's and Sovey Island, and the 16 would end at Yeon and 44th. Exactly reverse of what's happening today, where the 15 goes as far as Yeon and 44th, and the 16 provides service beyond it. Again, moving the problem from one area to another. It's already kind of confusing having today's 16 go over the St. John's Bridge, serve St. John's, come back, and then go to Sovey Island. That doesn't really make sense to me. You're having one bus going across the river twice, kind of doubling back. St. John's, Sovey Island. Those are two different destinations. You've got two different buses to work with, the 15 and the 16. So what I would do here is, yes, I would still have the 15 extend to St. John's, and that's it. And then the 16 would continue doing what it already does and just go straight to Sovey Island without serving St. John's. So if you wanted St. John's service, you take the 15. If you want Sovey Island, you take the 16. There's two different bus lines here, and there's two different destinations. I hate to beat a dead horse here, but I would treat the two lines as two lines, because they're two lines. Alright, now time for the 35, 36, and 39. I know that's kind of weird, but TriMet's kind of messing with this area in a very strange way. I don't fully disagree, but I don't fully agree either. There's no doubt in my mind that service through this area greatly improved since the draft service concept, where they basically slashed everything in this general area, except for the 35. But TriMet's done it kind of weird. They want to have the 35 split apart randomly and turn into two different line 35s, so that it would branch, but they would be parallel to each other. One branch would still be going on Macadam Avenue, just like it always does and always will, and the other branch would go on Taylor's Ferry and then on Terwilliger to serve the Lewis and Clark campus, which was originally going to get completely slashed before it then joins again to the 35 to serve Lake Oswego, and then eventually onwards to Oregon City. This is actually super cool that Lewis and Clark College will be getting service all day from a bus from downtown Portland. I think that was a great use of resources, but I don't really understand why this couldn't just be its own line. If you look right now at how it currently is, there's a line 36 that also travels on Macadam. It only runs during the weekday rush, but that could of course be improved. And it doesn't really go to Lewis and Clark or anything, but the point is that there's two buses on Macadam, the 35 and the 36. So if instead the 36 was its own bus that came out of downtown Portland, North Terminal or whatever, and served exactly the same route as the 35, except did the branch to Lewis and Clark College and ended at Lake Oswego Transit Center, and that was it, it might make a little more sense to actually have it as two different bus lines instead of saying, oh, this is a line 35 via Lewis and Clark, or a line 35 via whatever you'd call the other branch. Via Macadam? Well, all 35s are going to go on Macadam for at least a little bit, so I don't really understand why this couldn't have just been its own line, but I'm definitely glad to see that Lewis and Clark College is retaining service, and in fact will have it all day long and connect with downtown Portland and Lake Oswego Transit Center. It seems like a big time improvement. I just wish the line number wasn't also the 35. Okay, so I was originally going to record a completely different take here by talking about how this could also be just renumbered as the line 39. But then, just a few days after I made this video, TriMet came out with the service improvements for the next couple of years, which included something strange about line 39. The service would be, I guess, temporarily, although I'm really not sure how it's meant to work, it would be at least temporarily rerouted to serve a completely different route, not even close to Lewis and Clark College, but still perform the loop up at Bertha, Capitol Highway, and Barber Boulevards. But it would actually serve the Wells High School students, and so it would have a heavily reduced schedule and would connect with Barber Transit Center. I am not kidding. So, yeah, the 39's gone through some recent upgrades, and I kinda honestly hope it stays. This seems like a very interesting service, but I'm not sure. It's kinda weird. Now time for the 42 and 45. Once again, an example of moving the problem from one area to another. Vermont Street is going to get all-day service, which is super cool, at the expense of the 45, which will now get rush hour only service. Seriously, is it not already bad enough on the 45? It's worse than hourly all day long. I guarantee you, if you don't want anybody to use the line 45 anymore, then do this. But if you do want people to use the 45, don't reduce it to rush hour only. I'm actually totally fine with the 45 being rerouted to serve Beaverton Transit Center via today's line 53 route where it kind of goes through the weird loops. I'm actually okay with that, but I have a couple of ideas which I'll mention later in this video. And about that whole replacing the 53 to Beaverton Transit Center, why did they have it go on 5th Street in Beaverton? Nobody uses 5th Street. Put it on Allen Boulevard where there's no bus service. Allen Boulevard. Not 5th Street. Now for the line 43 again. You're getting a lot of attention, line 43. Yeah, the Corbett Avenue section is not coming back. The section out of downtown Portland onto Corbett Avenue, and basically one of the original streetcar routes from 100 years ago, is going to be eliminated forever. That neighborhood will no longer have transit service because you can just use Barber Boulevard or Macadam Avenue. But like I said, it's not always easy to walk from that general neighborhood to Barber or Macadam to do whatever you want to do, despite what the concept says. Just look at any of the areas on Street View on Corbett Avenue, and you might see what I mean. Some of them, either Barber doesn't have great sidewalks, or it's just disconnected in a way that's not easily walkable. Or in the case of walking to Macadam Avenue, you'll probably have to cross over the Gibbs Street Bridge over I-5, which is noisy and full of air pollution. Maybe it would be a good idea to have some sort of shuttle. I don't know how you would do this, but some sort of shuttle or just short line that does in fact run on this bus route to provide at least some service to it, and it could end somewhere, whether it's on Macadam Avenue or maybe Barber or Terwilliger somehow. I do think that some service through here would be a good idea. I'm just not sure how you would implement the shuttle service. The 44 and the 96, once again, they are canceling the 96. Why are we canceling routes that go on I-5? I will remind you once again, the 96 can go from Tualatin to Portland in 20 minutes. It is the fastest way to get to Portland from Tualatin. I'll say it again, it takes 20 minutes. It will be replaced by an extension of the line 44, which will not be fast at all, and will make the line 44 almost unnecessarily long. So I'm not really sure I agree. Also, what's with the weird branch at PCC Sylvania? Some line 44s will continue to do what they already do and just extend out of PCC on this new route. But there are some that will branch off west, go the complete other direction, and go to Tigard Transit Center instead. What? Now I get it. It definitely makes sense having some service go from Tigard Transit Center to PCC Sylvania, as they're really not that far apart, and is currently possible thanks to the line 78, whose route will be changing anyway. So I see why they did this, but I have an idea for this that I'll talk about later for how to not have it as a branch of the 44. 46. Still refusing to run service to an Intel campus, huh? Well, I hope there's a better alternative around, because I know driving is not better. It's not taking cars off the roads. The 46 will be entirely canceled. Service to Intel Jones Farm, service on Glencoe and Evergreen roads, even service on Brookwood, all canceled. And replaced with people's personal vehicles. Now, I don't work for Intel, so I don't know what their shuttle situation is. I know they have some shuttles, but I don't know if the Jones Farm campus does. If not, it might be time to start up some Jones Farm shuttles. Or maybe you could have Ride Connection take over this portion, because they do serve the more rural areas, and it might make more sense to provide trips from Ride Connection rather than a TriMet service. If TriMet's thing is about, oh, we don't really want to run through rural areas, well, then don't. Maybe have Ride Connection take it over instead, and maybe have it connect to some other city somehow. There needs to be some sort of alternative. I still don't really get it. Intel is definitely one of the biggest employers of Washington County. I don't really understand why we're taking service away from Intel Jones Farm. Oh, 'cause nobody uses it. Yeah, 'cause you don't provide enough service to this area to where people want to use it. It needs to be improved. It needs, in some way, whether it's through Ride Connection or whether it's through not canceling the 46 and instead offering more service, or possibly tweaking the route to serve more people's homes, to maybe not use Evergreen Road, but instead maybe some other road that cuts through that neighborhood so that it's more centrally located to people. I'm not sure, but I think there's a solution here that we're just not getting to. Now onto the 51 and 55. Okay, canceling the 55 is both good and bad. I understand the point of it because of how close Hamilton Street is to Beaverton Hillsdale Highway, and way more services provided on Beaverton Hillsdale Highway, so just use it. I get that. But the portion on Sunset Boulevard kind of isn't. It goes kind of way up and over. So canceling it doesn't really make sense. Yes, TriMet does want to extend the Line 51 down to Sunset Boulevard, which is fine, but I have my opinions about this. I have an idea, which I'll talk about in the next section, which would retain Line 55 service for about half of its route and extend the 51. More info again in the next section. Line 57. I brought it up last time and I'm going to bring it up again. No frequency increase planned for this route. The Line 57 is TriMet's 5th highest ridership bus line, and it has remained at 15-minute frequent service for too long. We have needed 12-minute, maybe even 10 minutes frequency on the Line 57 for quite some time now. But there's no real route change needed. That's really my only complaint. So the 66. So the 43 and 56 will provide an all-day replacement for over half of the Markham Hill buses. The 61, 64, and 65. But what about the 66? There's not going to be an all-day replacement bus. The Line 8 already runs frequent service and will continue to run all day, so that will provide service from downtown. So that means 3 bus lines will be going in and around Markham Hill and OHSU all day. But wait a second, again, what about the 66? Right now, you could take a 66 on a weekday rush, afternoon, come out of OHSU, go over the Ross Island Bridge, onto Powell, up Cesar Chavez Boulevard, all the way to the Hollywood Transit Center. All quite express on one bus. But after the 66 gets canceled, you have to take a Line 8 to exit OHSU, then transfer to a Line 9 in downtown, and then transfer to a Line 75 at Cesar Chavez Boulevard. That's 3 buses, 3 local non-express buses versus just the 66 that we have today. It's not like the 66 ends in the middle of nowhere either. It ends at Hollywood Transit Center, which connects with 3 of the 5 MAX lines. But wait, there is another way you can get to Hollywood Transit Center with 2 transfers, not 3. If you take the Line 8 out of OHSU, you can transfer to a MAX blue, red, or green line at Pioneer Square, and that can take you to Hollywood Transit Center as well. But what if you live somewhere on Powell or Cesar Chavez? You're still going to need to take the 9 or the 75 or potentially both, all because the 66 is canceled. It's just a major inconvenience no matter what way you look at it. Out of all the Markham Hill routes, really the 66 seems like the worst one to cancel, because it goes pretty far out, and even if service was only retained during the weekday rush as it currently is and goes toward Markham Hill in the morning and toward Hollywood in the evening, I still think it would be better than just outright canceling it. Now time for the 76 and the 154. I still think it's weird that TriMet wants to tack on this whole Oregon City extension that runs hourly out of Meridian Park Hospital in Tualatin. So we're going to tack on this parasite to the end of the Line 76 route, a frequent service route that runs hourly, that means every 4 buses, just to go to Oregon City. That just doesn't feel right to me. The 76 is a key north-south corridor through Washington County, serving major cities and major areas. We don't really need to be serving Oregon City with that. That just doesn't really relate to anything that the 76 solves. Instead of canceling the 154, I would retool the 154 into what they propose to be the 76's extension. And what this basically means is that, yeah, the 154 will continue to exist. Again, familiarity. That seems like a big theme in this video. But there's one key difference I would make, and that is that I would have the buses go on I-205 and I-5, and instead of serving the 76 at Meridian Park Hospital, which really doesn't need multiple buses serving it, I would instead have it go all the way to Tualatin Park and Ride, which connects with other services and is more like a transit center and sort of future-proofs the idea for the Bridgeport Transit Center that would replace it for Southwest Corridor Max. It's good to have lots of buses serving it. And the 95. Does there really need to be a bus on 148th when you've got them at 122nd and 162nd, and the bus on 162nd does not run very frequently and only runs 30-foot buses? I just don't feel as though this would be super worthwhile, other than the simple fact that it does connect with the Max Blue Line at the 148th Avenue Max station, but I'm kind of on the fence about this one. Alright, it's time to get really super in-depth with some of these changes and where I would put them. Let's start with the 3. Yep, line 3. I've talked about it actually a couple times, but I'd like to talk about it again. The 3, 51, and 55. Maybe this is personal preference, but I really don't like the whole branched routes idea, especially when those branches are quite long. I think it's made sense for quite a while to split the 51 into 2 routes, the 3 and the 51. The 3 would provide service to Council Crest Park, and it would provide it more than just during weekday rush. It would provide similar service to like how the 63 goes to the Rose Garden and Japanese Garden. It's a park that you can access from downtown Portland by taking 1 bus. And so I think the 3 to Council Crest Park would make a lot of sense for people who are in downtown and want to go to Council Crest Park. It should be a decision of, do I want to go to the Rose Garden area today, or do I want to go to Council Crest Park today? That choice should be 50-50. The service should be pretty much the same. Hourly service to Council Crest Park all day long, 7 days a week. Then the 51 would serve just the Dosh Road branch that it currently does, coming out of Portland and probably during the rush hours only, going on its existing route until Dosh and Hamilton. I agree with TriMet that it shouldn't just end at Dosh and Hamilton, but I also don't think it should go down Sunset Boulevard. If it instead just stayed on Dosh Road, well, Dosh Road eventually becomes 30th Avenue after you cross Beaverton-Hillsdale Highway. And this nicely funnels into Capitol Highway, which has service on the line 44 running on it. But the difference is, I would have this new extension of the 51 continue on Capitol Highway until the Barber Transit Center, and it would end there. So Barber Transit Center would actually get used as a transit center. So what about Sunset Boulevard? Well, I got you covered. Keep the 55, but only keep about half of it, or maybe even a little less. All of the Hamilton Street portion and all of the 78th Avenue, Laurelwood, Raleigh Hills portion, that would all be discontinued. But instead, the 55 would start in Portland, just like its existing route on Columbia and Jefferson Streets, come down Barber, Capitol Highway, just exactly like the 55 does, but instead it would go on Sunset Boulevard. And so the 55 would provide basically the same existing service that it already does. Again, familiarity. But as soon as you get to Dosh Road, it would actually go up Dosh Road, and the 55 would be the bus line that turns around at Dosh and Hamilton, not the 51. And so that's where it would end. It would be a pretty short bus line, but it seems like it would be pretty important because, well, Sunset Boulevard isn't really close to other transit services depending on the part of that road that you're on. So to hopefully help clear that up, let's go over the destinations of each bus. So there would be the 3 Council Crest, and you could either go to Portland or to Council Crest. The 51 Vista Dosh would be to Portland or to Barber Transit Center, and the 55 Sunset Boulevard would be to Portland or to Dosh and Hamilton. Alright, time for the 43 and 44. It would almost make too much sense to have at least the 43 serving Barber Transit Center. Right now, it's almost hilarious the 43 goes right by the transit center without serving it. It serves the intersection where you can just go straight into the transit center, and it doesn't. It goes on Barber and then just goes away from the transit center. It's like Barber Transit Center is a disease that the 43 doesn't want to catch. Barber Transit Center, and it's common among people who live in the area and know the transit center pretty well, the transit center is almost criminally underserved. And so there's more than enough room at the transit center to have the 43 and 51 serving it. Looking at the map, it does appear as though the 43 is going to serve Barber Transit Center, and I hope it does, and I think it probably will, because it's going to be replacing the Line 64 service out of OHSU, which does serve the Barber Transit Center. I'm okay with the 44 not serving the transit center and instead just going right straight through Capitol Highway, because it is a lengthy enough of a detour to serve the transit center to where I think it might be kind of annoying to do. It would be quite a bit faster to just go straight through. Depending on time of day and how you'd run this bus, it would probably be easier to just transfer to a 51, like I was talking about, if you extended the 51 to Barber Transit Center. That way you could actually get into there from Capitol Highway. So that way, again, the 44 would be cutting straight through, not serving Barber Transit Center, and the 51 would from Capitol Highway. That's confusing. Alright, so you remember how I was talking about the 44 and how it branched from PCC to Tigard and it was kind of all weird? I have a solution to ease confusion on that. Instead of creating this long branch that goes the complete opposite direction of where the rest of the 44 buses will go, what if you instead took some sort of bus that ended at Tigard Transit Center and extended it that little bit further so that it actually ended at PCC Sylvania? Let's say you extended the 97 to Tigard, which remember, TriMet is wanting to call this the 131 for some reason. Let's say you extended it a little bit further and it actually ended at PCC Sylvania. So the 97 would have these destinations. You could either go to Sherwood or to PCC Sylvania. And it might say to PCC Sylvania via Tigard or via Tigard Transit Center or something like that. Alright, now time for the 45. Okay, hear me out. This is going to sound crazy. Sunset Transit Center instead of Beaverton Transit Center. Alright, so I recorded a whole thing for this too, but again, because of the Line 39 proposed future on TriMet's service changes that were announced right after I was about to start editing this video, well, something interesting is happening. So, the proposed Line 39 Goes between Barber Transit Center and up into through Hillsdale area. So what this means is you could actually keep the Line 45's route pretty much the same. It would begin in downtown Portland on Jefferson and Columbia Streets, go down Garden Home just like it does today. But as soon as it gets to Olson Road, it would take a right onto Olson instead of a left. Then it would just stay on Olson until Beaverton Hillsdale Highway. Then after this point, the road becomes Shoals Ferry Road, which you could have service on this as well, and then eventually from here it leads into Skyline Boulevard, which actually connects with the Line 58, the 19, and continues beyond the Sunset Highway, and eventually you would end up at Barnes Road, which is served by the Line 20. So then you could just follow the Line 20's route from there all the way to Sunset Transit Center. And you could have it to where it's like what we know today, where the 20 goes into the St. Vincent Hospital complex, and the 45, I suppose, would just skip past it. Alright, it's time for the Oregon City stuff again. So how would I extend or rework this proposed hourly extension to Oregon City? Again, it wouldn't be the 76. The 76 would end all trips at Meridian Park Hospital. Late at night, you'd have some that end at Tigard Transit Center, just like they currently do. And heck, you could even have some end at Tualatin Park and Ride, depending on how you're going to do the schedule. But it wouldn't be a part of the 76 that would go to Oregon City. It would be the 154. I wouldn't cancel the 154, and I would retain it for this service. It would begin at the Tualatin Park and Ride and take I-5 all the way until the interchange with I-205, head down I-205, so seriously, express routes, until Stafford Road. You take that exit, and then the rest of the route is just the exact same as the proposed extension to Oregon City. And I think that would work a little better. Now time for my wildest idea that I'm just going to throw out in this video. It might be time to make possibly 2 new transit centers, maybe even 3 because of that one that I mentioned earlier that I forgot. Now this is going to sound really crazy, but there is a transit center that has been not a transit center for over 2 decades. It's not even served by that many bus lines. The original Burlingame Transit Center. It was located at Barber and Bertha, and you can still see a little notch in the road if you look on satellite maps where the transit center used to be. Now this would be served by the lines 12, 42, 94, and whatever buses really run through this area. The other transit center is just simply renaming an area where there are lots of buses into a transit center, and that is the Markham Hill Transit Center. This would be located at the Sam Jackson Park Road and OHSU, the stop that literally just says OHSU on the buses. This is a long stretch of sidewalk where it could work as a transit center, and it would be served by the 8, 43, 56, 66, and the C-Tran line 190. That's right, I'm keeping the 66 in here, I'm hoping for the best. One other idea about the 43 and 56 is introducing some express trips to mimic today's Markham Hill trips. That way, again, familiarity and convenience so that people can get home quicker, depending on how they're traveling. And so you could introduce a 43E and a 56E that would only run during the rush hours and probably only in peak directions. That would basically mimic today's 61, 64, and 65. You know what? I'm going to make a dedicated video on Markham Hill buses at some point, and I think I'll go into a little more detail on how I would change the 43 and 56, because I actually have the entire list of stops that I would serve as well, and I have some other comments I'd like to make. So stay tuned, I don't know how soon, for a video on Markham Hill buses, past, present, and future. Alright, one last thing, and it's about the 43 and 56. I'm actually really proud of this idea that I thought of myself right before I went to bed, and it kept me up all night. Anyway, right now the plan is to have the 43 and 56 running together and circling around at OHSU and coming back the other way. That's great. That works. What if you extended them to go back out of OHSU onto Terwilliger and into downtown Portland? Out of OHSU, kind of like the Line 8 into downtown Portland. Now I know what you're thinking, then I would just take a Line 8 back to Portland. Okay, but here's what makes this so cool. You could actually have the 43 and 56 run down Columbia and Jefferson Streets, mimicking today's Line 68. That way, the Line 68 would also have an all-day replacement from 2 bus lines, and these buses would turn around at Goose Hollow. It also provides connections to Max from lines 43 and 56, which I feel could be quite powerful. The lines could switch just like today's 54 and 56. So if a 43 is coming into downtown Portland, it would switch to a 56 as soon as it hits Goose Hollow. And then it would do its thing, and when the 56 comes back to Portland, it would switch to a 43 once it hits Goose Hollow. The lines would run every 30 minutes, like it says that they're going to do, and offset, they will run every 15 minutes together. Alright, this went on for a while. This was supposed to be shorter than the draft, and I think it ended up being pretty close to definitely over half the length. Well, the simple fact that this video is shorter means that improvements were made. I had less to talk about, so it really was revised a lot from the original draft, which I'm very much looking forward to. And you might be too, because we could be seeing the first of these improvements as early as September this year. The keywords are as early as, so don't get your hopes up too much, but we'll have to see what they are. Well, I'm excited to see that in the future, and hopefully TriMet does some things that I've considered in this video. I know they'll have additional comment periods, but until then, I thank you for watching this movie, and I will see you on Friday.